Hello, everyone from Chelsea Fan TV. Welcome back to another episode of 3 Points Perspective with myself, Charlie, and Nina. I am back from holiday and I feel like I've already got a cold. Nina has a cough, and Charlie's just powering through. So, even though the results are picked up, I think physically it is starting to take its toll on us. But listen, guys, it's good to be here as always. I mean, Charlie, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, mate, all right. I was a bit disappointed the transfer window's been so poor, not just from a Chelsea perspective, but in general. But in terms of the results, they've been decent. We're into the final. Obviously, we're still in the FA Cup. There's a favourable draw in the next round if we can get the job done at Villa Park somehow. So yeah, I think on the pitch things are definitely improving, and there are reasons to be optimistic for the second half of the season. So yeah, I don't think Chelsea are in too bad a place right now.
I agree. And when I was watching back the fan cams, obviously I wasn't at the game. I was literally just flying in. But I heard you say quite a few times, Charlie, that it's not as bad as people say, and I completely agree with you, mate. But I've been saying this for a longer period. I think that I'm maybe a little bit more extreme than you are. I really have backed Poch. So it is nice to see that, in my opinion, I'm right. I think it's quite nice to see that. I know some people don't agree with that. I know Lewis is still not convinced. But for me, I do think that Poch has what we need. Whether that means we're going to win a league title in the next few years, that's a different conversation. But right now, we need a manager who's going to pick up, these young players who have barely any experience for the most part, and we just need someone who can actually allow them to see that potential shine through. And we talk about it all the time with tactics and this and that, but ultimately, I do believe that in this particular situation, it is about allowing the individuals to thrive, and that's why we talk about having so many individual moments. But we'll get into it. I mean, there's loads to discuss. Nina, how are you doing as well?
Yeah, good. Apart from the cough, good. I think, to be honest, like with you, after the game, I was a bit frustrated. Like at the fan cams of Charlie, I was a bit frustrated because, like, when it's 0-0 and you're the team that sort of has the more promising chances and you don't take them. When you're lucky enough to get the first draw to be at home and you've got the opportunity to just get it over and done with without needing to go away to Villa Park. You sort of expect that we can potentially do the job, but upon reflection now, a couple of days later, I think there are more signs of improvement on the pitch. I mean, that game we were creating a little bit more. It was just a case of lacking that quality in the final third. So, yeah, I think one thing that's good about Chelsea is, regardless how our season's going, we seem to be up and down in terms of how we feel about the season, isn't it? Which is quite bizarre because a lot of people sort of wrote it off 2 months ago. But, now we've got a cup final to play in. And I mean, as much as whether you believe or not we can beat Liverpool, it's still the very fact that we're in a final and Poch is in a final in his first season. So, yeah, I think there are things to be hopeful for. It's not all doom and gloom.
Well, if I'm not wrong, the Villa game is that 10 games undefeated at Stamford Bridge now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a
which is
good
positive
record.
in itself. Yeah,
From where we came from
from where we
to
came
be in that
from.
situation, and not even feel like that is the situation. See, that's the thing that baffles me, is that we beat Middlesbrough and people go, "Oh well, you should have beat Middlesbrough." It's
Yeah.
like, well, I don't necessarily know if that is the case. I mean, if we would have been as bad as Man United were the other day in the FA Cup, I can't remember who they played, but it was a League
Newport.
Two side. Who was it?
Are you talking about the Newport game?
Newport. I mean, if we would have been as bad as Man United in that game, we would have been out the cup, having conceded and lost in the first leg. So I think that we deserve more credit than people have given us, not only because we won, the fact that we won scoring 6 goals, the fact that we played exceptional football, and the fact that players like Disasi played unbelievably out of position, which is also a little bit frustrating because it kind of takes away from the fact that Pochettino's done that with a lot of players this season and it hasn't necessarily worked. But I mean, at least the players are willing to adapt. And maybe this shows that even when we're not fully comfortable in terms of having the players in the right positions. They're starting to learn to adapt when they need to play in others. So obviously it's not practical, but with the injury situations that a lot of the top teams seem to have these days, at least you know that players in our squad are getting used to, you know, being a little bit more versatile. But I mean, let's get straight into it with some of the transfer news. Victor Osimhen has made his decision. So he said, he hasn't said where he's going, but it's being tipped that he is coming to Chelsea and that is going to be his club of choice. Obviously, we won't know until the summer because he's very focused on Napoli as it stands. I mean, how do you guys feel about Victor Osimhen? We've spoken about strikers so many times on this show. He was definitely up there with the first choice for a lot of Chelsea fans, but there are other strikers we were being linked with as well. I mean, would he be your first choice?
I mean, for me, mate, I would always be Ivan Toney as the first choice, but it's clear that whilst there's some admirers of him within the club, it's kind of quite split on whether, you know, they should proceed forward with him. Look, Osimhen, for me, like, I think he's a very good player. There's a lot of ability there. There's a lot of potential. He can certainly get a lot better. My main thing is I just don't think he's quite as good right now as a lot of people make out. A lot of people making out like he's world-class and he's unbelievable. He's not world-class right now. He's definitely got the potential to be, but right now, for me, I just think he's a very good player. You know, he fits the age profile.
World class in a striker, though, because I mean, if you look
for me, mate, I think like you've got to be top. For me, if you're world class, you've got to be sort of top two, or like maybe probably top three in the world in your position. I just don't think Osimhen right now is world class. Has he got the potential to be world class? Absolutely. You know, he seems to have everything. His finishing's good. He's very good in the air. You know, he's got good link-up play. You know, he's not just about putting the ball in the back of the net. He has got more to his game than that. My only concern is, like, obviously, historically, we've been, you know, we spent loads of money on strikers, and generally speaking, apart from two in the last 20 plus years, the rest of them have all been absolutely shit. And so there's a chance that could happen again. It's Serie A. I'm not saying it's a poor league, but in comparison, you know, to the Premier League, it's very, very different. It's obviously it's not going to translate completely. Osimhen coming, just because he scored a load of goals in Serie A doesn't mean he's going to come and score loads of goals in the Premier League necessarily. And you know what, it is a lot of money, but you know, he's out of AFCON at the moment. He's scoring a few goals there. He's obviously spending a lot of time with Drogba. I'm sure Drogba is probably, you know, having a little word with him about, you know, you should come and join Chelsea or whatever. Look, look, don't get me wrong. If he joins Chelsea, I'm not going to be disappointed by it. I just think for me right now, Ivan Toney would be a better fit for us. I just think that Osimhen is going to take a little bit longer to adapt. I don't think that he can't adapt. And look, if you're looking for like someone that's available on the market who is a top level player that is going to make a big difference to your team, there's not very many of those. Like, you're looking at Osimhen and you're looking at Ivan Toney. Other than that, you're then going to the next rung down, like in terms of strikers with kind of potentially looking at Sesko, you're looking at Jimenez at final. Like, you're looking at that sort of next bracket down, which is not really what we need. So if we didn't get Osimhen, I would be a little bit concerned about what direction we'd sort of go in. You know, you'd have to maybe look at trying to get Toney, but then there's potential issues there. If Arsenal get themselves together, I think he'd probably rather go there if he had the choice. So it almost feels like for Chelsea, if we're going to get like a top level striker, it's Victor Osimhen or we're shopping in the next level down.
Yeah, I mean, no, there's some good points there. I mean, do you agree with that, Nina?
Yeah, I mean, look, with me, I definitely would rather bring someone that's got a larger CV, more experience, and someone that almost has a bit of a less risk, if I can say, of flopping at Chelsea, basically. But I think with Victor Osimhen, I completely agree with Charlie's points that, you know, he's viewed as a very talented individual, and a lot of people now will put him up top there with like the best strikers that are out there at the minute. But I think there's a nice balance between how much he's got right now and the potential, in terms of, I already think he's shown enough to make you believe that he can be an absolutely brilliant player in years to come as well. And I think that balance is almost worth taking the risk, if that makes sense, because we've so far sort of tried the two where we've taken in, you know, strikers that are meant to be up there already well established and they haven't done well. We've then gone the other way, the opposite way, and taken strikers that have just had a really good half a season maybe at their former club. So I think Victor Osimhen sort of comes in the middle because, you know, he's doing well in a big tournament right now. You know, he's been great for Napoli and he's showcasing a lot of potential, like Charlie said. And I just think that there's a nice balance of him sort of having a good foundation and developing. And, you know, what a better way than to do it in the Premier League? You know, what a better way to build on your potential and unleash your full potential in the Premier League, you know, playing for the best league in the world. So I think it makes sense, because I also really like the fact that it's a sort of like an interest on the players' behalf as well. I mean, I love the fact that, you know, players want to come to Chelsea, and I think it makes it all the better. You know that when they come, they'll work and they have that sort of attraction towards the club. I don't necessarily think we'll get that from someone like Ivan Toney, because I just don't believe that if he's provided with the choice to pick, for example, between Arsenal and Chelsea, I don't believe that he will pick Chelsea. And I think that's a big factor to take into consideration, because for me, it always matters if a player wants to be at a club or not. You know, you saw it with Lukaku. If he doesn't want to be there, it won't work out no matter how much talent you have. And with someone like Osimhen, if he's, you know, sort of talking about Chelsea with a smile on his face, if he's very excited by that prospect, then I think that's something really special. And, you know, we've been sort of in pursuit of it. So again, it's like if you're working on something, and there's just a more likely chance of it sort of working out, if that makes sense. So I'm completely open to that idea.
I just think, like, if it comes down to it in the summer, right? Obviously, let's presume that Mbappe goes to Real Madrid, which, you know, he probably does, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at PSG are going to be in the market for someone. Like, they would definitely be looking at Victor Osimhen. That money to them wouldn't be an issue. It just depends, like, how set Osimhen is on joining Chelsea. Because let's be real, if he's not that fussed, and you've got, for example, a PSG interested, or you've got, let's say Mbappe decides to stay at PSG for whatever reasons, Real Madrid are desperate for a centre forward. They wouldn't think twice about going to go and pay just over about 100 odd million for Victor Osimhen. And it doesn't matter what football club you are. If Real Madrid come calling, you don't say no. You go there. I don't care if it's Chelsea, Man United, whoever it is. Like, you go to Real Madrid if that's a choice you've got. So my concern would be, if other clubs come in, unless he's 100% convinced on coming to Chelsea, then I think we would find it difficult to beat off interest from the likes of Real Madrid potentially, or a PSG. Like, that would be my main concern when we're most unlikely to have Champions League football to offer. So unless he's convinced on coming, I think it could be tricky for us in the summer with other clubs coming involved.
Well, he says he's made his decision. So for me,
imagine if he just goes to Saudi, like he's made his decision, just to Saudi.
Yeah, thanks Real Madrid, thanks PSG, bye Chelsea, see you later.
I mean, fair play. You've got to do what you've got to do. But I just don't see that happening, to be honest with you. The fact that he's come out publicly and declared that he's made his own decision, for me, that's why I'm so confident it's Chelsea. Why would you come out and say that if it's someone else? Because he hasn't really been heavily linked with Real Madrid. He hasn't been linked with PSG, because these are all if, buts, and maybes. If Mbappe leaves, you know, we don't know. For all we know, he might sign a new contract. That's not likely. But if I was Victor Osimhen, I wouldn't want to leave Napoli for PSG. What's so much better about the French league than the Italian league? What's so much better about France and Italy? You know, Napoli's still a very, very big club, and he's already loved there. He performs there. I just don't really see how it changes the dimension, to be honest with you. Whereas Chelsea, I think, is a completely different step. You're going into the Premier League. It's the biggest league in world football, and obviously you've got your Drogbas and those people to live up to. You know, those are his heroes at Chelsea, those kind of players. So that actually makes sense. But I mean, when we talk about stats, I mean, very, very impressive. In the 21-22 season, Victor Osimhen played 32 games, scored 18 goals, and got 6 assists. In the 22-23 season, he played 39 games, scored 31 goals, and got 5 assists. And so far this season, he's played 18 games, scored 8 goals, and got 3 assists. Now, I know there's been a slight dip, if you want to say that, this season.
He's been injured as well, to be fair, for parts of this season.
Yeah, it doesn't take into consideration, obviously, substitute appearances or anything like that. But I mean, that shows consistency. And I mean, we can all debate world class. I personally would say he is world class. For me, a striker is judged on goals. And, we could say whatever we want about any striker. People have been talking about his service at AFCON. And when he doesn't get fed, he doesn't look very good.
I think
you would say that about...
So
yeah,
you would say like, if you've got no service, you're going to look shit. It doesn't matter who you are.
Absolutely. And that doesn't really apply to us because we've created so many chances. If you look at our XG, I don't know what social media outlet came out with it, but someone came out with our expected XG. If we had a striker who could put the ball in the back of the net, we'd be fifth. And they said that was a guarantee because we've underperformed so much in terms of expected goals. And again, that's why I give Pochettino credit, because the manager's got us playing in a way that we do create. Nobody seems to ever take any notice of it. It seems to be optimists like myself that say it, but people don't really believe it. And then they call for the manager's head after a few bad results. But, we'll see what happens with Osimhen. I mean, on to a slightly lesser profile, Jhon Durán from Aston Villa. We are still interested, but it seems like even though he's injured, that interest has not died down. We're still very much keen on signing the potential talent, but I don't really know why, and I feel like this all sort of comes around Broha being sold as well. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I've never seen Jhon Durán play. I never heard of him before we were linked with him. And I don't understand why we would buy him when we're being linked with Osimhen and players like that. It just seems like a complete U-turn. So how can you see that working out?
For me, it's purely financial. Like, you look at it, right, and basically what Chelsea would be doing is selling Broja for pure profit, and then they would be bringing in Durán potentially, who would be probably be on less wages. You would spread his cost over 5 years, and it obviously looks much better for the books. But ultimately, Durán, is 20? I think he's 20 years old. He's played a handful of times with Villa. He scored 2 goals in the Premier League. I think he did score a banger against Crystal Palace earlier this season. But other than that, he joined a year ago. He joined last January from the Chicago Fire in the MLS. I mean, apparently we had looked at him whilst he was at the Chicago Fire. But obviously, went to Villa. Like, for me, it doesn't make any sense on a footballing perspective. The only way it makes sense is on a financial perspective. But what's to say? Why would it be more beneficial for Chelsea to put their time and effort into Durán rather than Broja? You've got 2 strikers that are on a very similar level. Why would it not be? But why would it be more beneficial to put time and effort into Durán rather than time and effort into Broja? Like, I'm not saying that Broja is good enough for Chelsea, but what I'm saying is why is it suddenly more worthwhile to put time into someone that's more raw than Broja than it would be to put that same time into Broja? I don't really get it. So for me, I think it would purely be a move that is financially driven, because on a football term, it doesn't make any sense. You then got Jackson and Durán potentially, and then whoever ends up coming in the summer. Like, how much is this Durán guy actually going to play? Like, you would think not very much. If Nkunku gets himself together and he's fit, obviously Jackson will play, and whoever comes in the summer will play. So you sort of end up in a situation where, well, if this kid can't really get that many minutes at Aston Villa, where's he getting minutes at Chelsea? He simply isn't. So for me, on a footballing level, it don't make any sense. The only way it's appealing to Chelsea is purely from a financial perspective, in my opinion, because at the moment, I don't see how he makes any difference for us on the pitch whatsoever.
No, I don't get it either. Could you imagine if it's been so quiet this transfer window, but we do pursue Jhon Durán in the end? Like, it just doesn't really make sense. And it's like, it's not a stopgap either. And it's not a short-term solution to our goal-scoring problems either. So it's like, I don't know, apart from sort of being on the bench and coming on, getting a few odd minutes here and there, unless we're trying to make Jackson number 1 until summer. Obviously, if Broja leaves the door as well, then that's going to be, an automatic sort of step up. You're going to be number 1, and then potentially someone like Jhon Durán, I don't know, coming in rotation player. I don't know, but again, it just doesn't really make sense, and it doesn't align with our priorities either. So for me, it's just I don't really get it.
I don't think it will happen just purely based on the fact that, we've got 2 days left of the transfer window, and Aston Villa would most certainly want a replacement because he kind of is their backup striker. So they'd want a replacement. So that's leaving it very short.
If they think he's got potential as well, would they not want to keep him, even if he is the sort of rotation player?
Well, to be fair, if the money's right, then everyone's got a price. So if the money was right, then they obviously would sell him. But yeah, it leaves you very short of getting a replacement in. So at this late stage in the window, if Chelsea genuinely wanted Durán, surely we would have acted sooner than this. I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's going to be a last-minute scramble or something. But I personally can't see this one happening.
No, it doesn't make any sense to me either. And again, when we talk about the fact that this is financially driven, under Roman, we would always applaud great business, but you knew that ultimately he just wanted the best for the club. And I mean, I'm not Bowley out. I'm not Clearlake out. I'm sort of still feeling my way into the situation and trying to figure it out, because I think once you say you want them out, there's no going back from it. So I'm just trying to sort of assess it and say, these guys have probably got in this for the wrong reasons in a lot of ways. I don't see why a huge capital investment fund like Clearlake would get involved. But when you look at Bowley's record, just looking at him, he has a record of investing heavily into the Dodgers, into the Lakers, and also with quite a lot of success. Me personally, I don't really watch basketball, but I like baseball. And the Dodgers are right up there with one of the best teams. They don't win every year, but they're always up there. I'm looking at that from a Chelsea perspective. He won't want to see us drop. So if we are investing to then do good business, that isn't a bad thing as long as we use the money to invest into better players. So I still think there's a potential that's why we're looking at selling some of these players and then signing potential to then sell on, so that we can sign superstars like Osimhen and fund those deals further down the line. But yeah, I think there's just a lot of question marks because we're not used to this. We've never done this kind of business, not in my lifetime, at least. So yeah, a lot of question marks. And I can understand why a lot of Chelsea fans would be frustrated. But at the same time, if you're looking at it from Pochettino's perspective, of course, he wouldn't mind a ready-made player ready to slot in. But if I was Poch, I wouldn't want to have what Poch had last season, where another 9 players come in who are still unexperienced. So, it just creates even more of a divide in the dressing room. So at least keep that unity, keep coaching the players you have and see what you can get out of them. And then obviously we can add to it. So
to be fair, I'm almost glad to a degree that so far no one's come in. I mean, obviously it would be great if we could have got a forward or if someone comes in on a short-term deal in the last couple of days that can actually make a difference and fine. But I think, it's quite refreshing that given there's been so much upheaval in terms of players coming in the last 2 windows, I think it's actually quite good not to have any more new faces coming in and just continue to build with what we've got. Because let's be honest, what we've got right now, that is enough to finish in the Europa League places. Yeah, it absolutely is. We've got a lot of players to come back from injury still. What we have available to us is more than good enough to get in the top 5, top 6 places for Europa League. So I don't think our success is, for this season is going to be defined by whether we bring a forward in this month or not. And I think it is quite good just for the continuity and for players getting to know each other. If no new players do end up coming in, as much as we need a forward, I'd rather not have anyone than just panic buy someone for the sake of it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's funny that we talk about Europa League. Maybe a month or 2 ago, we wouldn't have said that, but it has picked up, and I do definitely think that European football is a guarantee. Before we go on to the Liverpool preview, we'll just touch on Adam Wharton, a midfielder, a 19-year-old midfielder for Blackburn. Again, I've never heard of him, but apparently he was scouted by Paul with Stanley, and he managed to see something that obviously we missed. And apparently there's a player in there, and 25 million is not a small price tag for a championship player. So the last player I can think of that came to the Premier League for that kind of money. I know Ollie Watkins came in for probably less than that. James Maddison obviously came to Leicester from Norwich. So when players have come from those positions in the Championship, working their way up to the Premier League for a decent fee, it has actually worked quite a lot of the time. But again, this isn't something that Chelsea have done. We're not Leicester. We're not a team like that should necessarily be shopping in that market. Do you guys know anything about this player? And do you remember anything iconic from when we played Blackburn?
I was going to say, mate, he played against us in the Carabao Cup in whatever round it was, but I didn't sort of particularly think he stood out or anything. I mean, I weren't really paying any attention to him or anything like that. I haven't really heard of him, to be honest. I think Newcastle are potentially interested as well. He's obviously a talented boy, and Winstanley has got a good eye for talent spotting, but it just feels like we've got a load of basically scouts trying to build a squad, which is not really the way you should be doing it. But I just don't see. Look, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I just don't see how this really benefits Chelsea in any way whatsoever. If we signed him, I think maybe Blackburn were looking for a deal, sort of 25 million all in. Potentially, he would remain there for the rest of the season and join up in the summer. But I would just look at it as one of those where it would end up he would come to Chelsea if he did come, and he'd be loaned around the multi-club model for a few years and he'd probably be sold for profit. I just don't see how he would feature in the first team that regularly. When you look at who we've got, at the moment we've got Enzo, Caicedo, Gallagher, Lavia, Santos, Cassidy, Ugachukwu. That's 7 already, right? And then you think, we need another one, do we? All right, okay, maybe Gallagher leaves at some point, but I just don't see where this guy would get minutes and where he would fit in playing at Chelsea. It just doesn't make sense, other than stockpiling talent and this guy maybe flips for a profit a few years down the line. But other than that, mate, it just doesn't make sense. And if I was him and advising him, I'd be like, well, hang on a second, look how many midfielders Chelsea have got. Where are you going to play? That's not going to be a good move for your career at this stage.
Let me just ask you this, Charlie. How do you feel about just buying players to then sell them on, and that being the goal with a player like that?
I don't mind. I don't mind that let's be real. Like, football's it is a business. Yes, it's about winning, and and obviously winning makes you money. But there's more than just winning that makes money. And ultimately that's what happens. We are going to sign. Football clubs will sign players. They'll hardly play and they'll flip them for a profit. That's what happens. For me personally, though, I haven't got a problem with that. I just feel that right now we're doing that way too often. We're looking at signing too many players to just flip them for a profit. And also, there's no guarantee that these guys will be flipped for a profit either, because they're going to have to play to increase their value. And if we're just signing them and they're not playing, then how are we expecting to make a profit on anyone? Like, you look at some of the players we've signed recently, and you'd have to say, outside of maybe your Enzo's and your Caicedo sort of thing, how many players are we realistically making a profit on that we signed in the last year or 18 months? I would say hardly any. And therein lies the problem. It's all very well signing these guys, will flip them for profit, but ultimately they've got to play to increase their value. And if they're hardly playing, their value is going to go down.
I suppose as well, when you look at, his perspective, obviously a regular at Blackburn at 19, still an incredible achievement, I don't remember exactly what I was doing at 19, but I wasn't doing that. I just don't understand what would lure a player, except financially, obviously, because you presume he would be given a nice bump on the salary. But from a game time perspective, if Adam Wharton's coming to Chelsea to play, that makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. And it's almost it's both unfair on the player, because again, you're probably inhibiting his game. If he's balling out in the Championship right now, chances are if he comes to the Premier League and he's just sat rotting on the bench, or he gets just loaned out somewhere randomly, he's probably not going to get as much out of his game. And then also, I'm a bit concerned if we are sort of, I agree that Winstanley, and I like to believe that they do know what they're doing when they're scouting these young talented players, but I'm also a bit worried if just one game is enough to make you believe that this player can absolutely thrive at Chelsea, for example. If it was the Blackburn game at Stamford Bridge that, you know, caught their eye, I think we all know that it's not sensible to make a judgment out of one game for a player performing, right?
Yeah,
I don't think they do it just based off one game.
No, I know, but still, you know, that's when you would, you know, show interest. That's when you would dig deeper, you would research, you would, you know, check out his whole game, and that's what will spark the initial interest.
yeah. I mean, the only thing I can say is obviously I haven't watched any highlights or replays from the game.
No.
Obviously, he must have done something to be scouted, you know, because this could have happened in any game, and it happened to be against Blackburn. For a player in the Championship to come through and be very recognisable to a scout, he's got to have something about him. I'm going to obviously watch some clips and some compilations when we finish recording, but again, I just don't really know.
Those lie, Alex. Those lie. Compilations lie.
That is true. That is
anyone
true.
looks good in the comp because it's all
You've got to watch the highlights, man. You've got to watch the highlights. So, I mean, that's all I have to work with, really. I'm not going to watch Blackburn. I mean, I watched Blackburn once against Reading last season because that's where I live, and Reading beat them 3-0. So, I mean, if that's anything to go by, I don't know if he played in that game. Then we're not off to a great start, but we'll have to wait and see with what happens. But yeah, I mean, that's the only transfer news that's really going around, to be honest with you. A little bit disappointing, but again, when you spend so heavily, you've got to calm down at some point. And I think Bowley and Egbali have sort of toned it down a little bit. Now, this is the big one, the Liverpool game. Not only this month in the Premier League, but obviously the Carabao Cup. The final, I think, is on the 25th of February, unless that's, you know, due to change. For me, this game at Anfield is not something I'm particularly worried about. I don't care if we lose as long as we win the cup. That's how I look at it. If we lose against Liverpool on Wednesday, and I'm going up to Anfield, I'm making the trip. If we still lose and we manage to win the Carabao Cup, I'm not bothered. That's how I'm looking at it. Now, some people like Kev have said to me, listen, Alex, you want to win to have good momentum going into the game. I actually don't really think it matters who wins. I think that whatever happens, the ultimate priority is going to be the cup. Now, I know Liverpool are top of the Premier League. Obviously, we're fighting for the European spots. If we win the Carabao Cup, we automatically get European football. So that is a priority for me. I mean, do you guys feel the same way, or is there a different perspective?
Well, if the trade-off was lose in the league and win the cup, then I think we're all taking it. But ultimately, like, I think we can. Look, I think we can still do something there. I mean, generally speaking, like Chelsea-Liverpool games end in draws. I think the last 7 or 8 have all been draws. Yeah. So you would maybe say that the safe money would be on a draw, but I think that Liverpool this season are definitely, you know, stepped up a level. They're top of the league. They're in the Carabao Cup final. They're still in the Europa League. They're still in the FA Cup. You know, they're fighting on all fronts. You know, Klopp's obviously announced he's leaving. That's going to give them more motivation to give him the send-off that he deserves for the work that he's done there. Look, let's be real. Liverpool are miles better than us. There's no denying that. But that doesn't mean that we can't go there and give them problems and potentially cause an upset, or at least come out of there with a point. Obviously, Salah's going to be missing. That's a blow for them, but they've got more than enough firepower up there. The likes of Nunes, Jota, Gakpo, etc. They're still scoring goals. So Salah missing, whilst it's not ideal for them, it's hardly the end of the world. They've got, you know, capable players to step in. I just think for us, like, to go there and get a result. We went there last season with a terrible team and managed to get a 0-0. So, you know, I think we can do something, but it's going to require us to defend very well. It's going to require us to take our chances. And don't get me wrong, we will create chances. You know, teams do create chances against Liverpool. Like Liverpool, you know, defensively, you can get at them a bit. You can get goals against them. So for me, it's just going to depend. Can we stay solid at the back? And the chances we do create, we absolutely have to be clinical. But I don't think it's like, you know, all doom and gloom and we're 100% going to lose this game. I'm not saying we're going to win, but I think we can absolutely get out of there with a point. And I think that would be a very good result.
Oh, optimism, guys. I'm worried about this one. I don't tend to
I'm
get
worried as
worried.
well, Nina. I'm worried as well.
You guys are like, yeah, we can go there, get a point. I'm like, can
Well,
we?
we can, but I'm not saying it's going to happen. But we absolutely, no, I don't think it's just this game is a write-off.
It's not a write-off, but I mean, you mentioned 0-0 at Liverpool last season, but they were a different Liverpool side even then. I mean, it's a big step up this season. I just think they've got a lot more to play for, and I don't mean that in a way that Chelsea is, the season's done, but with the Klopp news, with the fact that they get to extend their lead at the top of the league as well, because I know they've got a game in hand as well right now, so they're going to want to win this one at all costs, and they're going to go out there with everything. And I think Anfield now more than ever is going to be a more intimidating place to go to because of what we've seen in the recent game especially. So I think, look, with me, it's the fact that I'm looking at the two squads and I'm thinking we are already at weakness with the fact that we're not going to have two fullbacks available for that game. Already you look at us in that regard, and we can be so exposed in that regard. Without Salah, they still got so much threat on those wings. And I just worry, if we are playing a centre-back at right-back or vice versa, I just think that could really result in something negative. But, if you finish a chance, if you just score one goal, then that has enough in the game to potentially maybe, allow you to sit back and be a bit more defensive potentially. But again, like you guys say, I don't think losing to Liverpool at Anfield right now in this current time is going to be so shocking. But I think, and I mentioned this to Charlie, Alex, on Sunday after the game, is that if we turn up mentally to that, and we actually show spirit and fight, and we don't just, take defeat, and if we do concede, we don't just, give up, then maybe potentially that's where I do see us getting a draw. But other than that, I just think looking at the squads, the bench as well is something we need to take into consideration. What options are we really going to have right now with the amount of injuries we have? We're not too spoiled for refreshment and bringing on someone that can also be a game changer in that regard. So you sort of have to rely with what you've got on the pitch. But Liverpool already have one up on us, because regardless of how many players they have out, they still also do have players that can sort of step up and not take out as much quality if you do make a sub. So there's a lot of sort of strengths and weaknesses that you can sort of compare, but maybe we can just rely on the history of draws that we have for this one and hopefully just count on that. But yeah, looking at it in open play and just squads, bench, atmosphere, manager and all of that regard, they've got everything much better than us at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, I said 2-0 Liverpool. That was my prediction, and I don't feel like that should surprise anyone. Yeah, you said it. They're top of the league. They've got so many threats. It is nice to know that Salah's going to be out, and obviously Alisson's not available as well, if I'm not wrong. And hopefully
I think he's back in now, no?
Is he?
I think he played yesterday.
He played against Norwich.
I didn't watch the FA Cup game, so maybe Alisson is back then in that case. Hopefully he doesn't play in the Carabao Cup, though. I think Klopp was hinting that he wouldn't, because their other keeper's actually been quite solid. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. For me, we need to go into this game and soak it up. I don't think that this is a game where Chelsea fans will expect us to go out and press, especially when I've heard the comments that Klopp made to the Liverpool supporters, calling for them to basically make life as difficult for us as they can, because they've been a little bit underwhelming at times. I think it's going to be pumping on Wednesday night. And a lot of the time you wouldn't necessarily say that, but when you look at the history of the two clubs, there is a big rivalry there that people don't seem to talk about as much. I think on par with Tottenham, Chelsea hate Liverpool more than any other club. My dad would say that. A lot of the older fans would say that as well. There's a big history. So, we've got a lot to play for. Even if we can get a point, I mean, that's a big point. But, I am struggling to see where that comes from. I think if that is the case, it will be a 0-0. I don't see us outscoring Liverpool. I don't see us coming from behind. And I don't see us holding on to a lead if we do score first. So I think if we sit deep and essentially park the bus, then maybe we've got a chance. But that's not the Pochettino way. And I don't see him doing that. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Yeah, I'm sort of struggling to read that game out in my head. But yeah, I mean, guys, is there anything else that you just wanted to touch on about the Liverpool game? Anything I've missed, or
I think so, mate. I don't fancy us to win. I think the best we can do is a draw. But you know, you just never know. You just never know in football. You know, stranger things have happened. We could turn up and do something.
There's
but
the hope. There's the hope.
There's always hope, isn't there? There's always hope. But no, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
There's no point like lying about it. It's going to be difficult, and you know, if we get a point, then that's an exceptional result for us.
100%. Again, listen, I think we just need to prioritise the Carabao. So if that means dropping Chilwell, not playing Chilwell, if that means resting Gusto, if that means resting in Nkunku, I'm all for it, to be honest with you. I really don't care. Especially if we are sitting deep. That's why I mention it. Because if you've got players like Mudryk who don't want to press, and Colwell at left back, I don't think he's available anyway, then oh God, my throat.
God, who's going to play at left back then?
I think Chilwell will play.
It's got to be him.
He didn't start in the week, so I think he'll play.
It definitely will be him.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, for me, if we're going to play a weaker team, then that will give us a license to sit back. Whereas with some of our more experienced players who've had more game time this season, generally speaking, we've tried to press. So we'll see what happens with that. But listen, we're going to round it out there, guys. If you have been watching for the 41 minutes, the whole show, thank you very much. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Nina, for coming on. Listen, guys, we've been doing this show for a little while. If you agree or disagree with any of the points that myself, Nina, or Charlie has made, let us know in the comments. And if you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button as well. Everyone is welcome to join the channel more often. We're going to be making a few more videos before the Liverpool game, but until then, we'll see you guys, and up the Chelsea.